centuries, mankind has been fascinated with realms outside of our conscious awareness. Through a series of interviews with practitioners, guest speakers, and experts, Liberate the Podcast covers all that and more. From health and holistic healing to the supernatural, we aim to educate, motivate, inspire, and liberate your consciousness. Hi, welcome to another episode of Liberate the Podcast. Today, every guest is special, but, I'm going to say that I love when people that have been coming to the shop that I can bring in that hold so much wisdom, because a lot of times we have a lot of our practitioners on, or some people that teach classes regularly, and Morgan has, she's done a class here, but I think that one of the most valuable things that we can offer is somebody that's grounded within the 3D and the spiritual realm. And the guest that we have today, her name's Morgan, and she has a journey through entrepreneurship and creativity, and that we're really going to be talking about the importance of finding creativity and wizardry, if I can say that word right. But, finding and being that wizard in your own life, and how that magic really creates opportunities for you in so many different realms. So Morgan, welcome. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, I love to wizard, so that's number one. So I can't wait to talk about it. And like you said, my name's Morgan. I'm an artist, and I paint, and I make coloring books so people get to be creative. My background is in emotional intelligence and social strategy and entrepreneurship, like you mentioned, and also a fashion designer. So I've kind of played in all these different worlds and arrived here at this moment, which is great.
Which I love, bringing all the different creativity and entrepreneur and business senses. And I mean, she's, helped with crowdfunding platforms and been a strategist and done all of this other stuff, and then you're just full diving in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To all of the, and just like blossoming, and it's and the very interesting is that we share many different mutual friends, but we didn't even know that when we met from our other world, because that's the nice thing, like you have this spiritual world and meeting at the shop and everything like that, but then you're attached to this business CEO group that I'm involved in and all this other stuff. So I love that. So let's talk about wizards.
Okay, great. Perfect. I really love working with archetypes. So the first thing I like when I think of the wizard is this person who can conjure up magic and alchemy and really, transform something into something else, right? Yeah. And to me, I think the human being is the thought alchemist, right? We transform our thoughts into physical reality. How cool is our superpower? We think it and it comes true. And I think a lot, we've seen The Secret and like all these different kind of to-do guru kind of stuff to like tap us into this power of manifestation. But I think we need to get back to our little childhood self who started like imagining being in space, right? The magic of like seeing the stars and like touching the moon rocks and like what it would be like to build a home on the moon, And while that's kind of far out there, I think that a lot of our dreams feel that far out there for us. So really tapping into that yummy kid-like imagiation brings...
And with a kid-like imagination, they found a way to do it, And I know whether as a kid making a rock hill into that imagination of it's Mars or the moon or whatever, or whether they just found a way to go and do that or have that toy or be there or experience that, even though it felt like it was imagination, it became a reality. I love the way you said that our superpower is our thoughts.
It's our thoughts.
I can honestly say I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that before. And that's a beautiful way to look at it, because we sit there and we create things and we assemble things, and the science fiction writers of the past are the prophets of the future, like they think of a helicopter and they draw it and write it in the book, and they even do a sketch, and lo and behold, 50 years later, we're creating a helicopter that's flying with these propellers. I mean, that's happened time and time again with submarines, with airplanes, with helicopters, with space shuttle rockets, and all this stuff. So, pay attention to our science fiction movies and our thoughts, because we'll probably create it in some way, shape, or form, right?
Totally. And I think it's important to, not just get that we're creating our new inventions that are really cool, but our reality, right? Our heaven. Heaven is through our thoughts, and we create and we manifest this, right? And so I think now in our current paradigm and our kind of where society sits, we get kind of caught in the apocalypse or the bad things that are happening and all these stuff, and forget how truly powerful we are to manifest our dreams in any environment, and through what we call inspiration, which is that deep relaxation into just trusting ourselves and creating from imagination. That comes into form. We have to be patient. We have to nurture it like a little seed. We have to water it and play with it and make sure it has time. We protect it, but it will eventually become all that we dream of if we give it that space. So
if you give it the space and the right environment, right?
The right environment is so important, which who you wizard with, right? It's we don't actually realize that the person we're going to coffee with, we're wizarding with, we're creating reality. If we're gossiping about somebody who's hurting our feelings and we create this reality of perpetual suffering. Or we sit there and we're oh, what do we want to create?
Yeah.
Right? It's I'm, recently for me, it's I'm transitioning into I'm really called to the garden. I want to be with flowers, and I've never gardened in my life, so I don't know anything. I don't know how to garden,
Well,
But I get that there's dirt, and there's seeds, and there's water, and there's sunshine, and the principles of it. But am I studied? No. But through this imagination, right, this is the other part that I love, is our inner wisdom shows up.
Yeah.
We have access to all the information, right? And we release doctrine, and we come into oh, the flowers, they smell so good. I can face right now, It's the sun is beaming down. I get to eat this delicious cucumber, and my body's so happy. And so every day, because I'm manifesting this new home with this garden and this place to relax, because that's my heaven, it's I can taste it and feel it. And when I meet people, that's what I talk about. It's
and you further make it stronger and stronger, and you feed into that reality.
Yeah. And it's so yummy.
And I love what you said about we have this infinite wisdom, and we have this ability to tap in. You don't have to know today how to garden, but if you know that that's what you want, you'll figure out how to learn how to do that through Oracle Google, or through,
Right? Or Googling, which is what my funny word for in my womb, I'm Googling.
Through your own wisdom, through trial and error, through experience, or through teaching and mentorship, maybe you volunteer at a community garden and you learn or whatever, but this is gardening as one aspect, but it's every aspect. For those that are listening, it's every aspect of your life, right? It doesn't mean that just because somebody might not know how to write a book that they can't figure it out, right?
Totally.
Or that they can't learn through a process,
Yeah, totally. Oh, just thinking about it makes me excited, right? And I think that's another important piece of using your imagination, is literally embodying those emotions. We're so afraid of emotions in today's society. Don't get too excited, or don't get too sad, or don't, but really as human beings, our power, our superpower, along with thought, is this human feeling.
Yeah.
Right? It's our deep compassion for each other that makes us want to strive to build heaven. If we didn't love everybody around us, if we didn't actually have the soul, right? Seeing that, we would have no desire to build that. We'd have no desire to perfect what is around us and to build something more beautiful. And so our feelings, that is another really important component. And I remember I was sitting there and walking. So I went through awakening recently, and I went into the woods, as I call it. But really, it was just artist studio that I talked to no one, and I took no showers, right? And I was just painting nonstop, and I was channeling all this beautiful art and crazy. And I needed that alone time. I needed to learn what was my desire, what were my thoughts. I think that's a really important step as any human beings, really
Yeah, who am I instead of who are all of these filters that I've assimilated myself through the years. But as it parents or teachers or those friends or those siblings, is it everybody else's perspective that I'm fitting into this certain mold or, you know, holographic image, or is it mine, right?
Yes.
You know, like, and so I love that you took the time to just be you. And what did you discover?
So much.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. One, that I love to imagine things, you know, like instead of just like kind of force things, like this energy of inspiration came through me, like breath, right? And I never knew relaxation before because I was so trying to fit everybody's perspective into my reality because I love people so much and I want us all to create and build, you know? And so it gave me enough time to like hear the subtleness of myself in this soft way.
Yeah.
And I learned that I'm very soft, very vulnerable. You know, being in the business environment, I was very masculine, and not that masculine's bad, but when it's yang overruns the yin, it's not in harmony, right? And
anything that's in balance, you know, the opposite too.
Totally, right? And so I came from a very yang, you know, like hardcore businesswoman, made sure that I made more or equal to the men, you know, and that everybody, certainly my boundaries were covered, and we created from this place of heart, but it was like very like raw, you know.
Yeah.
And like when I got into my kid, I was like, oh, I don't really like that, you know. That's not really who I am at all. And that, you know, I really got to take off all the layers of armor. That's what the process was. It's like armor from myself, armor from the world, armor from intimacy, armor from my dreams, like armor, just shed to just really getting to the simplicity of my soul that is so pure and so divine and so awesome. Like, I was like, oh, it's like really cool to be a human being, you know?
And not only, I would say, human being, but to be you.
Yeah,
you know,
and to
like
be
you,
me.
You have that energy of alignment with yourself. Like, you know, I think, and that probably comes from stripping that armor and finding, it's not just about stripping the armor, it's about acceptance and appreciation. So, you know, there's a twofold there. Strip it away, know who you are, and then love and accept yourself.
Yeah.
Your body, your mind, your thought, your life, your advantages and disadvantages, your gifts and your struggles, you know?
Totally. Even most recently, it was my consciousness has gotten what I call like expanded, like my vibration is speeding up. It's like really great and ecstatic, and I'm in these bliss states, and I'm moving so fast, right? And then there's pieces of me that are still working their way up to meet parts of me, like 80% of me lives up here and vibrating, you know, and then there's 20% that's still like, I'm a little girl and I don't know what to do and it hurts or whatever. And and I'm very competitive, so I was like, as a child I was very competitive.
No, I don't get that from you at all.
Yeah, totally a game player with myself. And so even going through my awakening, I noticed that I was like pushing, like really pushing, like perfection. And that deep acceptance that you're talking about, it was like, I got to accept the pieces of me that still, you know, because there's a lot more that goes into this human existence and on, you know, layers of, let's call it reality, and then also layers of being and layers of relationship, like so much. And for it to all become aligned, it takes some time.
Yeah.
And because I was so competitive, it was really hard for me to like accept those pieces of me that weren't quite like running fast enough or like jumping and swimming, you know.
Yeah.
And so I just got to deeply accept that and finally let some parts of me move slow and some parts of me move fast and not have them be fighting, you know, like trying to... Yeah.
Just being okay exactly where you're at.
Yeah, exactly where I'm at. And that, you know, for me has been really helpful even in this wizarding process, right? So, like I mentioned, I went away to learn my desire, which is really important. I highly suggest. Not everybody has, you know, we have families, we have things to do. You can't go for 2 years like I did, but you know, even just a week of Vipassana or these different things that are available. So going away, finding your voice and starting to listen to the small whispers is so important. And then this really beautiful thing came up because I was always what I call tumultuous emotionally. Like stretch every which was so happy. So and I learned to suppress it, like suppress all of that tornado that was inside of me, and it acted out even though I, you know, on ways that I can't even explain. you're like, why is that happening? Oh, because there's a tornado under the surface, right?
Yeah.
And so, and through this process, I learned my capacity to feel is actually beautiful. Like, humans, like the stretching, and as long as you don't try to take people with you, and you also sit in your stillness, like, this is where, like, for me, my true wisdom came in, because I'm stretching far beyond just the present experience into, like, the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's just, like, delicious. So in that, right, I've, so my deep acceptance of my emotional nature, you know, it's like this process of imagination has become so alive because I literally let it come up with all the feelings that I'm experiencing, you know, whether it's in the garden or the business I want to create or the relationship I want to create. And even sometimes I will notice, like, fear will come up, like, oh, is it really possible? And then I get to meet that piece of myself instead of, like, it must all be happy, you know, or whatever So that has been so profound as far as a kind of a daily experience of, like, allowing my feelings to help guide me, but be responsible, right? So I don't need anybody else. I'm like, I'm sovereign, I'm complete, I'm, you know, but let them reveal what it, like, this.
And not to shame them.
Yeah, not to shame them.
So if you're feeling sadness or if you're feeling anger, frustration or whatnot, you're feeling it and you're letting it go.
Yeah.
Because you're allowing yourself to actually be aware of it for, you know, a moment, many moments, whatever the case, but you're not saying you're wrong or this or creating that further tornado because it's boiled up inside. And so the Jack in the Box going
totally.
You know?
Right, and it happens behind you and you're like, you act surprised, you know, totally. Yeah. So feelings, I mean, to be a human being with feelings and thought, and, like, finally for me to experience the alignment of that, the, you know, and the expansive nature of, like, living from that space has been really.
So what do you think that got you to really get into alignment with that? Like, I mean, and what caused you to seek that, you know, so kind of a two-part, like, what got you to say, you know what, I'm not in alignment with me and I need to do something about it? Mm-hmm. You know, was there something that happened? Was there an experience? Was there, you know, what point in your life was this? And I'd love to hear.
Yeah, so I think spirit, you know, like, truthfully, like, I was, and it's not the only way to this, right? Because I've worked with a lot of people now. But my spirit, I was so far away from my core, you know, and what I was doing, even though it looked good and people were giving me high fives and telling me how great I was and I was getting paid great money and I was married and I had, like, this picturesque life, right? And it was great, but it wasn't true. It wasn't true. So my spirit kind of, when I was 27-year-old, like, picked me up and shook me, and I was, like, drowning, literally drowning. My sexuality came up and all this stuff, because the precursors to a Kundalini awakening is, like, you start moving your root energy, which root is, like, you know, root in sexuality. So I'm, like, dying, and I'm having all these feelings, and I'm married, and what the, you know, and then I'm shameful, and I'm just having this really deep experience, and he left me. Because and honestly, not because he wanted to abandon me, but he knew I needed space. He didn't know how to be an anchor in that, and he knew.
And you were changing and becoming different.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I always say to people, you know, not to say that to not work at marriage or that people can't grow together, but there's often times in our world nowadays, I mean, we're not living in the same world where somebody lives in the same house their whole life and they work at the same company from, you know, until they retire. It's like a very transient type of environment with lots going on, and people live in multiple cities, and oftentimes I think the average American works for at least 4 different corporations or companies within their lifetime, and it's like there's so much movement and momentum, you know, it's not the same thing anymore. And so with that change, you know, if you roll 2 marbles on the ground next to each other, maybe they roll together, but 9 times out of 10 they veer off in a certain direction. It can be a fraction of a millisecond, fraction of a little millimeter on the ground that turns into feet by the time it hits the opposite side of the wall.
Totally. And I had that moment.
Okay.
You know, and very surprising, because I really thought we would be together until I was 80, and we were happy. And so that really sparked this, I tried to become a CMO of a business and it blew up, and I went cross country with my rolly bag and I was sketching, and that's where the coloring book came from. And I started.
She has this amazing coloring book, by the way. Do you sell it on Amazon or anything else too? Or
just my website.
Just your website?
Hercoloringbook.com.
Hercoloringbook.com. I will put a link on there for you too, but it's beautiful, and I know that a lot of people are getting into awakening their inner child and the right brain, left brain connection of coloring and kind of zoning into that space and stuff. It's so powerful. But anyway, side note, okay, so you created the coloring book while you travel.
Yeah, and I was interviewing thousands of women on my journey across country. I was like, what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a mom? What does it mean to be a business person? What does it mean to be? And so I was like deeply curious, one, because I was questioning everything about what was real and what was necessary and what was how do women support each other, going through a divorce, I felt the deep need for the feminine. I was so far away from mine, and I didn't have a supportive group of women around me that I could really just settle into. And so I was like, what? And then I was hearing every woman kind of talk from the space except for a few. And and so I'm just like, okay, what is it? What are we, and really tapped into that we're all going through this awakening process together. And, we have to move through our aloneness and we have to move through change. And, so I interviewed them. And that was really great, and channeled this gorgeous coloring book that kind of walked me through my Kundalini awakening. I didn't know it was coming, because you never do. And then I ended up in Taiwan doing tea ceremony with my good friend Jared, and hives all over my body, and literally dropped 15 pounds in one tea ceremony. It was
really
wild.
What was this tea ceremony?
Just tea. Not even a hallucinogenic tea, a straight up pu'er tea with a tea master, and I didn't like him, because it turns out I was having my relationship with my father come out during a tea ceremony, and I realized that I needed to accept him, and just accepting my father, and it was really beautiful, and just 15 pounds.
Wow.
Exhaled. And everybody was like, what happened to you? And I was still getting these crazy hives,
Well, that shows how much, emotional is linked to physical, right? Having that awareness and having that physical reaction of how much do we carry with us, how much weight do we carry on our shoulders, how much extra baggage do we carry with us, and if we let that go and we release that, you may find that you release extra pounds or energy, or your muscles relax. I mean, to everybody, changes. To everybody, it's not that you're gonna release some emotions and you're gonna have the same experience as Morgan, because I want you all to go through an emotional release, but don't just think that you're doing that to lose the 15 pounds.
Yeah, totally.
just
tap into your body, so that, and then I ended up in Bali, traveling on a motorped, and feeling my body so going from this extreme pain to extreme bliss, and just it was so good. And then I came back home.
And how long was that trip?
It's 2 months.
Okay, so pretty good time in each place, really allowing yourself to be.
Yeah, and settling it, and just losing my mind, because I was, part of consciousness waking up is you lose your mind, because you're bridging your schizophrenic experience, right? Every human being has these, and I'm sure anybody can identify with the nice person and the mean person and the mother and the father and the how many voices are going on. And so part of our awakening is really coming into alignment and harmony, and shedding the voices that are not real and are just doctrine or conditioned, and then really starting to hear our voices, and there are opposites. They're there to balance each other, and so I got to start that process. So anyways, I arrived back in LA. I went in for a business meeting, right? I'm struggling. I barely could sit in a business meeting at this point, because I'm just rocketing out my body. And this guy walks up and he's like, I know you. And I was like, no, you don't. And he's like, no, I know you. And I'm like, no, you don't. And I was very uncomfortable. My whole body was agitated. I'm just what is this crazy man looking at me so intensely? And and I ran. I walked away really fast. And I'm a pretty confident, calm, energetic, but calm on the inside person. And I get into my business meeting, and the guy that was there, and I was like, oh, hi. And then who sits down with this guy? And he's just like smiling at me, you know, like, oh, I see you. And I'm like, what is happening? And then I ran into him another week later, and I ended up going through my Kundalini awakening. He like saw it coming. He's like, you know, spirit connection, right? And knew that he was there to help me through that. And so he got to like really guide me through the beginning process of this.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it was really great.
So he recognized your soul and he recognized you. It wasn't that you had met in the physical before in this lifetime, but he recognized that and was like,
yeah, I got you. And I'm like, don't look at me. You know, and it's weird to have somebody recognize your soul. You know, like that experience can be like shocking to the system. And so, you know, then my Kundalini rise, which could be a whole 45-minute podcast on its own. And
we'll have you back for that one.
Right? And so, and then now I completed the actual rise of the Kundalini. And, you know, I think that we have a lot of interesting doctrine and dogma out there. Like, we're all, like, going to be enlightened after we go through these awakenings and not have pieces of our humanity still working itself out or all these things. And it was, I mean, I remember thinking, I'm going to be an enlightened God up on a mountain and like, you know, and it was just like, but I go through it and I'm like, and I get to be an ordinary, beautiful human. And this is incredible. And like what a human is, like what it truly is and balancing those energies. And yes, having like super consciousness available and all these things, you know, really truly available in like a grounded, in the body way was so different than what I expected and so profound, you know, because for me, I never really fully identified with the enlightened master thing as a human being in this form, right? Yeah. And so just to like, oh, okay, like it's about being here. Like, this is where we get to create 3D reality is awesome.
Which I think that's where we're the enlightened masters and the living in a cave had been a period of time that we did go through as a culture and society, you know, on a global level. But now it's about very much integrated. You know, how can we be and operate in a spiritual connected self in our 3D world? And you see far more masters integrated within the realm than you do, you know, ever before. And that exclusion process isn't necessary anymore.
It's not necessary. And it also, it's like we're getting to bring harmony both in our system, like the balancing of the opposites, because we don't, you know, fear and trust, right? They are both in our system. We don't, you know, like fear, we don't have to have a fear monger there, but fear, it, you know, make sure that you don't get eaten by a mountain lion, right? So fear and trust, right? And so all the balancing when they're just kissing right up against each other, it's like the most blissful experience, you know, and you're in complete, like, judgment isn't there. You get to be discerning, right? And you get to have your heart open because you're fully present. And I think we're seeing that as a whole in society. We're balancing opposites. That's why we're also seeing this wild kind of like left, right,
oh my God, everywhere.
And it's very chaotic, but that's the process of like, you know, in a Kundalini awakening, it's exactly what's happening in society. But in the body, you're just getting pulled everywhere until it's like, and then the kisses up against each other and you're like, oh. And, you know, and we're bringing the technocratic world and the organic world, like, how do they
work together? They're starting to merge.
Right? And how do they serve one another? And so it's just this beautiful time to be in, really. At least for me, I'm just like going, wow, this is great. Just to see also the human being remember its eternalness. You know, it's, and its divinity. It's like, we are so perfect and we're creators. Like, we're not actually consumers. Like, we can buy a crystal, which is amazing because crystals are really helpful. But we're here to create. You know, and we've created a system that really is here to, like, consume, and we got us all confused.
And we're all out of alignment. You know, alignment with ourselves first and foremost, because, you know, that exists inside exists outside. And to change the outside, I must change the inside, right? On like an individual level, on a societal level, on a cultural level, on a global level. And so we have that. We have this whole feeling of unbalance. You know, I mean, we're not necessarily, you know, designed to, you know, be secluded or do all these tasks or be disconnected in this concrete jungle. We're designed, like our evolution has been integrated with nature.
Yeah.
Peace, calmness, healing when necessary, not pushing through,
Yeah.
and there's,
Ease. It's really funny. Everything, our body needs to be healed. We live in a very polluted environment right now until we get the technocratic world to work towards the cleaning of that completely. And so I have to purify it a lot. It's like I'm rocky in my spiritual training. I'm like, rocky training session,
Yeah.
But it's really cool because what I got is like, through my awakening is like bliss. It's all done through bliss.
Mm-hmm.
If it's hurt, I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And crying isn't hurting. I'm not saying that, release, but, if it's hurting, it's done wrong. I needed to sit. I'm like, ooh, that's not the way to go.
Yeah.
Like, bliss and peace, and, that's where it just releases from the system. If we fighting, there's this great parable about this. I'm trying to remember it correctly. But basically what we fight, our thought gives it energy, right? And it makes it stronger because that's how powerful our thought is. We give it away to everything. It's so funny. I just, laugh. It's like our best superpower. We're, fighting everything with it.
Yeah.
But when we do that, we're drained, we're exhausted, and we keep trying to go uphill, we're pushing all the bull, but it doesn't go anywhere because we just give it our strength, and it starts to topple us. Versus, when we just release the fight, right? It's all of that, and then it's the boulder turned into the best, sweetest massage that you've ever had, because it's just I'm just coming down and I'll roll over you, and you're oh, okay, great,
Yeah.
And then that's really, for me, it's been the best, because I used to do everything through pain personally, as a fighter.
Yeah, if it's not difficult, if it's not hard, then I'm not deserving,
Yeah, totally.
It's a very much strong archetype that exists within a lot of people, I like what you said about, and I want to touch more on that because I think it's so important for people to really digest and get about how our thoughts produce power and give and feed our emotions one way or next.
Yes. Yes.
Because the reality is you only really feel something, I think it's for less than 7 seconds or something like that, and then other than that it's your thought regurgitating the same, it's giving energy, and it's the thought creating a reactivation of a feeling, not the actual emotion.
Yes.
Or something like that. You guys have to fact check my exact seconds, but it's so many seconds, that's all you can hold it. And then we think about it, we get irritated, we feed it, we get more irritated, we get more sad because all of a sudden we started thinking about this one thing that somebody said to us, and pretty soon we're thinking about the time that we were abandoned as a child. What the heck happened there?
Totally. And I think, for me, those, not that they just feed it, they materialize in form, in sickness. You know what I mean? And it's for me, for instance, talking about the emotions, my resistance and my thought going towards non-acceptance of my father and constantly fighting that created this waking, right? And myself, I literally needed protection and so because I'm fighting the man or whatever, right? And it materializes in everybody differently in their systems or outside their systems in melodrama, but it does materialize physically. And so the other thing I think that we miss as a society is we don't talk about speed of thought. We just talk about thought. So there's low speed of thought, which is in the dense frequencies, and a lot, we think people are dumb sometimes because their speed of thought is slow, but they've just actually been polluted in their systems through technology, through food, through emotional, environments that didn't let them release, you know? And so as a human being, our real job, if we can do one thing, it's one, or two things, honor our emotions and increase our speed of thought. Because that really supports us being able to manifest correctly and purely and also see clearly. Really see clearly, because all of a sudden, and that's through the imagination. Imagining your kid and creating your worlds, you actually increase your speed of thought. This is why we don't want to take that away from kids, and also that we want them to play in the sandbox over actually being in school, and ask them questions. Okay, so how do the stars work? Not tell them how the star works, but how do the stars work, and let them go inside and go, okay, so I'm talking to the stars, and so this increase of speed of thought with getting that okay, our speed of thought is power. It's raw, conscious power. And so when I materialize an obstacle, all my power, all my source energy goes towards materializing a boulder in front of me. Or it goes towards blooming a garden or creating a magnificent relationship or, all the things. And so if we can really get tapped into that, I think it's just magic for human beings. It's just like they'll, and this is, for me, it's like clean food, clean water. And when I say clean food, listen to your body, go to the grocery store, put your hand over things. And, and that's why non-processed food is very more helpful, less ingredients, and even putting them together.
Less is more, most of the time.
Yeah.
And add an herb or two along the way,
right?
And you'll be fine.
Exactly, and start to learn the flavors of foods and how it makes your body feel. And then spring water. I mean, we've taken away people out of the land, and we've taken away their clean water, and then we make them go to grocery stores and work really, and all these things. And the biggest problem it does is it slows our speed of thought. And so then we don't know how to get out of the rat race.
Yeah, so the two things that I'm hearing, to kind of reiterate is the element of your thoughts being slowed down because of the suppression of the imagination.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I mean, you really can kind of see that happening. It's that everybody worries about giving the right answer instead of just allowing their self to express in answer, right? And so suddenly now they're training those neural pathways in their brain aren't functioning as well or firing off as fast because they're like sitting there and they're at the crossroads and they're like, well, this is really makes sense. Wait, should I tap into that database or that database or what should I really do? And then pretty soon before you know it, 30 seconds pass and they're not coming up with the answer that was asked, right?
Yes.
Because there's so much fear of providing the wrong answer. That you sit in schools and watch, like in the average public school across the United States at least, and I'm sure it's in other countries within the world, but you just sit in on it. Sit in on the class. I got one of my masters is in educational foundation, so like sitting in and looking, and you see people are scared to raise their hand. Yeah. They don't even want to. They not unless they know the answer 100%, and they raise their hand.
Which is a test in memory, not a test in speed of thought or creativity, and so the science behind that, right, is so great. I met with the guy from Google Glass, right,
okay,
and he created this basically this kind of like formula for creativity and rapid prototyping, like how to like really fastly use imagination and creativity to bring a product into form, right? And so they did a bunch of studying, and basically when a person thinks they know, right, or they want to be right, they freeze their hippocampus. Right? Versus imagining, right? What would it be like if we worked through this problem? Like, not do I know the answer to this problem, but like, what is this? Can I be in the world of what we're creating? Like an ocular device that projects reality. Like, what does that look like? What does that feel like? What are the possible problems? What are we gonna, And so when you get into not a wise space, a guru space, but into a childlike space, your brain speeds up.
And you're taking more air, and you're taking and that's how in so much people are problems first instead of creativity first.
Yeah.
Right? So that's like the first thing that I'm hearing is like allowing yourself not to care whether you get things wrong or whether it's gonna be perfect or whatnot, just to create and do, to express and to be. But the other thing that I think is important to note is the power of our physical self. And that this vessel holds an energetic vibration, right? Okay, so like if not to be gross, but if the sink or a pipe has a lot of corrosion, how much water is getting through that plumbing line?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that, then don't even go sewer-wise, just water. Like, is it low water pressure? Is it a lot of water pressure? Okay? So, like, if there's a lot of corrosion through the valve or through the pipeline, the water's going to come out really slowly, even if you pull it on full blast, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, our energy, if we have a lot of corrosion in our bodies, right? If our cells aren't working right, if we're not hydrated, right? If they can't connect, how much energy, how much wave of thought can really go through us?
Right?
And we have all these toxicity, the calcification within our system is these weird hydrogenated this, that, chemicals made in a lab, different foods that are like, okay, well, what is this? If you can't read how to read the word on the back of the package, it's probably going to create just calcification in your body. Like not real calcification, but this energetic calcification, if you follow, right?
Yeah, well, and probably even real if you looked it out on the cellular level.
Yeah.
It's like your cells are not vibrating; they're not alive.
And they're filled with this toxic waste, whether it's pesticides, whether it's stale water that's not absorbing, whether it's having BPA in the water because we're in this plastic water paradise, whether it's whatever it may be, right? Yeah. And then we wonder. And then all of these preservatives and other artificial colorings and flavors and stuff like that. But I think it's really important to note that we do have choices out there.
Yeah, and to trust, to stop believing every marketing campaign out there, every textbook you ever read. Throw it all out and go, okay, what is food? Become a little kid about your own, I had to relearn chewing when I went through my awakening. I didn't know how to chew food. These seem very simple human things. Turns out I didn't know how to do it, And so it's I think it's okay to get that, it might have been wrong to tell each other how to do things. Instead, why don't we reapproach ourselves as the wise adult person to the part of us that isn't fully up to date on how to live as a fully expressed, alive human being and go, okay, how do we chew food? How do we choose food? What is food? And let the little kid in us go, okay, food is this. Oh, it's nutrients. Okay, what is nutrients?
Yeah.
Oh, the apple looks very nutritious, very lush, and so...
Yeah, and leading you to, and I love that what you're expressing is allowing yourself to explore in a childlike wonder once again, without feeling that you know all the answers, and being open to what works for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many thousands of fad diets have come and went, right? There's not one way of eating that works for everybody. Listen to, maybe some people are better with broccoli, but some people might be better eating cauliflower, and maybe they stay away from that vegetable family altogether and they jump into asparagus. But allowing their self to say what works for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I it's that becoming sovereign. It's so that we can truly love, truly be with people, truly be compassionate. When we can hear ourselves, that's that time alone, when we can hear our hunger pains and listen and understand them, when we can feel our taste buds. All of this gives us access to living in heaven, truly, because all of a sudden your car, it's we have outsourced everything so much, for economy of life that we actually got away from life. So we have big hospitals that are science of sickness, but we don't have this science of life that's really available. And so we have to create it. We have to go, what is life? What is life force? What is aliveness? You know?
And what works. And, it's not taking our words for it here. It's allowing yourself to go and explore it, right? You know? Because it's about, do you feel good? Do you wake up in the morning and feel energized? Or you feel groggy? Can you hardly go? Do your thoughts feel sticky and low? Do you feel negative or positive? Do you feel happy? Do you know, those kind of things. And if it's not, and if it doesn't feel like if there's a part of you that feels like you could be more fulfilled and living in a happier way,
right?
Then maybe it's using that little scientist inside of you and that imagination to explore what that is.
Totally. And I want to just add one little thing is we're kind of cocaine addicts in society right now, so we're really used to that fast dopamine drop, and we consider that healthy or happy or happiness. And so getting from a deteriorated place of and using all the stimulants and all the food, sugars and all those things to a clean place where we can feel properly is, one, should always be a smooth transition and so soft and gentleness, but two, really start to just be a little, be a little kid about the detox, because there is a detox, I'm not gonna lie, and your pee might come out orange and you get to go, okay, well, the kidneys, they were what does orange mean to us? And like feel into what you think orange is and then Google it, you know, and to have a little fun in the process of, you know, it's like cleaning up the planet is the same as cleaning up our bodies, and we can clean up the planet by cleaning up our bodies, and we can also clean up the planet by cleaning up the planet, and that helps clean up our bodies, and it's both like a very beautiful relationship.
And it's so true, like to just go out and experience and experiment, everybody, like clean out your apartment, your home, like the part that you've been negating in your environment, clean out your office, whatever, and see if you feel a little bit cleaner inside.
Oh, it's my favorite. Whenever I'm feeling really like, you know, I literally have to go into my apartment. I look around my apartment, like, oh, my apartment's the direct reflection of the, and then I clean it up, and I'm like, oh, and then I get to see and feel with clarity what's happening in my system, which is like so powerful.
Oh my God.
Oh, so
that
good.
happened, like, you know, gearing up for the new shop, and I've been like, go, like these like days, like meeting construction and stuff like that, and I like, my bathroom was like a disaster, like clothes everywhere, clean clothes in this pile, dirty clothes in that pile, everything. I took one morning, I just cleaned owls, and I thought, right? You can breathe.
Space.
In flow.
Yeah. Energy, flow, and space. I for imagination, right? We're talking about this wonder, and what does wonder do when we approach it from not knowing? What is cleaning the house doing? It creates space for something new to be formed. We are creators. We want something new, and we also there's all parts of us: sustaining and maintaining. There's creation and new, and then there's things that are like, you know, ending the end of their cycle. But I think we haven't spent enough time clearing because we're so afraid of death, like that part of the process or like the chaos of it, that we kind of like, no, we don't need to clean, or we don't need to clear out, or we don't need to, that really inhibits this full creation process from coming in because there's no space.
Yeah.
And so, getting space. And I was talking to my girlfriends today because they were moving some energy out, and it's like, well, I think you probably, you know, it's like if you go through a breakup, you got to untangle your clothes from their clothes. And then you got to go through your clothes and see what's still, and then you got to move their stuff into boxes and move it out of the house. Like the breakup isn't done until they're actually out of your home, and that's why we like the famous like, oh, we got to get the boxes back to the right. It's such an important part of the.
But when you really look at these little like systems or processes that people have done unconsciously for such a long period of time, that they hold some level on an energetic in a plane that's very powerful. You know? These rituals or these habits that have been passed down culturally or whatever.
Yeah, and I love to even look at them. Like, I have these, like, kind of, like, observer in me that I'm watching. Like, oh, like, for instance, I go to the farmer's market and I grab a bunch of aloe. I've never wanted aloe. I don't even, it's like I'm a Croatian blooded. I don't even burn, you know, like, why do I need aloe? And I'm, like, and I'm like, I want aloe, and I want 5. And it was, like, very, like, yes, you know. And so I was just watching this little kid, and I remember being a little kid and trying to do that. And my parents were like, you can't have 5 aloes, or, you know, but it was potatoes at the time. Because I'm like, my system likes to do one thing at a time, and in processing, it doesn't really like to mix. And it also, like, and then it goes through and it understands and integrates, and then it moves on to its next thing. So it's like, I was reliving that little kid. I was like, oh, I wasn't really allowed to do the 5 aloe thing. And then when I get home, it was like I was going through, and all of a sudden it was like, eat the aloe. And I was like, what? I didn't even know you could eat aloe, you know? And I'm
so good for you.
Right, so good. And I'm scraping out the aloe, and I'm going, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, that's like clearing out I could feel it. I was like clearing out my stomach and getting it was like gooey, like moving through, and my vision just got cleaner and clearer and cleaner and clearer. And I was like, aloe's like a superfood, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like the coolest experience, and just to trust that, you know, like when we gravitate towards a food at the store, you know, like it's just
I love that. I love that you're just like living in trust and you're going with the flow. And the aloe, I feel like it's like saved my life.
Right?
You know?
Aloe's the bomb. I love aloe. Everybody listening, get some aloe. You know,
get aloe and eat 5 stalks or 5
get a fresh aloe.
And just rip it and scrape out it.
Be a little kid with the goo. Like I was having so much fun because the goo was in my fingers. I was like, oh, it's like I'm eating like a plant snot, you know? And I was just like a little kid. It was so fun. Oh my God.
Man.
Yeah.
So what else is next for you?
Creating heaven. Truly manifesting it on all levels into physical form for myself, and hopefully that inspires the planet to do the same for themselves. And for me particularly, that's, you know, making a home for myself with clean land and clean food and clean water, and inspiring the people around me to create through like group creativity projects and like this imagination stuff, and continuing my paintings and my artwork. And I mean, it's very simple. I realize, you know, my needs as a human being, like what keeps my soul singing is really what you talked about, is like community and feeling embodied and being able to create, and I'm pretty happy. So setting up that environment with
wow.
Thanks.
And if you had to leave the listeners with one bit of wisdom, what would you say?
Trust yourself.
Trust yourself.
Yeah, I know the world has taken that away from you in so many ways, and so give it back to yourself. You know, it's a long path to give it back to yourself. You know, there's many things that you need to do. You need to be generous. You need to have boundaries with yourself. You need to, you know, be non-judgmental, and it's like, and sacred. I get that you are sacred. You are so sacred, and so in kind of delving into all the layers and rebuilding that trust, it's going to be a lot easier to walk the path. It's going to be a lot easier to surrender into the flow of things, and to like trust your cravings, and also trust the darkness and the lightness and everything that comes in. And so, yeah, I would say give trust back to yourself.
So you hear it. And where can, like, giving love and trust and back, I want everybody to take a moment to just really think about that and how valuable that is, because, you know, even the premise of like this nation, it's always a pursuit. You know, instead of a being, instead of allowing, instead of a trusting, right? You know, and I really think in hearing you say that, and feeling, and based on the conversation and in my beliefs, you know, if we have more trust in ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We have more acceptance of ourselves.
Yeah.
And if we have more acceptance for ourselves, we have more love for ourselves.
Yeah.
And if we have more love for ourselves, we have more love for others, right?
Yeah.
You know? And that gets back in full circle to what you said in the beginning, about this superpower of our emotions, and this I'll take like the emotions, but the connection, but the love, right?
Yeah, it's love.
Love will move mountains, right?
Oh, it's the most powerful force on the planet next to thought, you know. And to me, love is the womb, right? It's the thing that really helps to, when we're going through that chaos, to balance the harmony. Love is there, just like, right? But you have to make a home for love. That's really...
Yeah, if you have no love for yourself, you have no love, right?
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Aww. So, once again, website for where they can buy your...
hercoloringbook.com, or come into the store, of course.
Come into the store. It's here at Liberate. We'll put them online eventually, too, when we ever get that going. And, yeah. I really enjoyed it. We're going to have you on again for the Kundalini Awakening episode. I think that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Until next time. Thank you all for joining. And as said, if you enjoyed this episode, just leave a little bit of feedback. Review, especially a written review, would be great, because it just helps people find us a little bit better on iTunes. But, you know, you can leave a couple stars, 5 stars, wonderful, whatever you feel. But thank you so much for joining us. Talk to you next time.